Hello, everybody. My name is Luis Elizondo, and thank you very much for being here today. What I'd like to do is take just a moment first to thank Mr. Javard for his tireless efforts coordinating this very, very important forum that we are all attending here today. And I'd also like to thank some of the participants that are here today, and of course you, ultimately, the audience, for being here. This is really a collective effort. We can't do it alone, and everybody needs to be part of this. And I think this is maybe one of the most important endeavors this century, and that is trying to figure out this enigma we call, this unexplained phenomena we call UFOs. So thank you very much for being here. What I'd like to do is really just start off the conversation with a simple question. And that question is, what does it mean to be human? And before you answer that question, I ask that you just take a moment and really think about it. What does it mean to be human? Is it the fact that we're made of flesh and blood? We have a body? Well, that's not really that uncommon. We share that in common with many other living things on this planet. So maybe it's because we can think for ourselves, right? Keeping in mind there's some invertebrates that can do that as well. So again, not that uncommon. So maybe it's because we walk on two legs and we're bipedal, and that's what sets us aside from everybody else and everything else. And, then again, that's a trait that we share with a common ostrich. So I don't think that's what makes us human. No, I think being human is perhaps one of the easiest things that we can feel and understand innately, but yet one of the most difficult things to be able to describe. And perhaps that is the one thing, being human, that sets us aside from every other life form on this planet. But what if for a moment mankind wasn't singular? Maybe just for a moment, it's mankind's, plural. Are we, as a society, even prepared to have that conversation? What if the things that make us human most, like emotions, love, empathy, are not necessarily unique traits to humans within the universe? Maybe other things can experience that too, and maybe the definition of being human isn't having two arms, two legs, and looking like this, or having a body, or having hair or no hair. Maybe being human is far more profound than that, and maybe those traits aren't unique to us. And so, for the past decade, I spent a good portion of my time pondering that very question, along with some very incredibly talented individuals within the U.S. government. And our reason for pondering this very question was due to our knowledge of some very extraordinary observations and data collected on behalf of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or you probably know it as ATIP. And what we learned during this time was nothing less than remarkable, in my opinion, and in the opinion of my colleagues. So, admittedly, when we first began our journey, we didn't know very much about the phenomena. We tried to keep it focused with Department of Defense equities and assets. So we had a very narrow scope of what we were trying to achieve. In fact, it was very narrow. It was just what was it and how did it work? And sometimes when people ask, I often joke that before I took the job, I couldn't even spell UFO. So as a result of a lot of our earlier efforts, you don't know what you don't know. So we took a very broad approach to studying this topic. It was a bit like trying to use a fishing net to catch a fly. But over time, we were able to refine our methodologies and be able to refine our collection efforts to a point where we were far more effective in being able to figure out what this was. And so this enigma, this puzzle, we began to start putting the pieces together. And we did that by creating categories of observables that we knew were very, very unique, and not consistent with anything else that we had in our inventory, or anybody else's that we were aware of. So it's a lot like putting together a puzzle, right? And when you have a very large jigsaw puzzle you have to put together, you try to find commonalities. So your grandmother may have taught you, when you have a jigsaw puzzle, start with the corners, because there's only 4 corners and you can find those shapes very easily. So that would be one bin. The next bin might be find all the edges and put those in another bin, set those aside. And then another category, another, if you will, observable, would be maybe putting all the similar colors together, because they're probably part of the same scene, and you would put those aside and bin those together. And very much in the same manner, we did the same with our program. We had these 5 categories, these bins, these observables, that were completely unique and different than everything else. And so I'll rehash this very quickly for you. You probably already know what those are. But the 5 categories, the first one is sudden and instantaneous acceleration. The second one is hypersonic velocities, not supersonic, hypersonic, very, very fast. The third is low observability. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but believe it or not, that is one of the observables. It's hard to see. It's hard to catch on radar. The fourth one is transmedium travel, the potential for an object to maneuver effortlessly, whether in atmosphere, low Earth orbit, and potentially even underwater, believe it or not. And then the last observable being positive lift, or in the vernacular, anti-gravity, I guess you could call it. And so that's how we approached this problem. That's how we started it. And as we began to collect information, things started to make sense. And so for the first time now, particularly in the last few years, we now have the mathematical formulas and the scientific modeling, and then also the observations, electro-optical data, etc., all finally coming together, pointing in the same direction. So originally, our focus was trying to figure out what these things were and how they worked. And unfortunately, I don't think we're really much closer to knowing what they are. But I'm very excited, because we just about figured out how they work, in our opinion. It's very, very compelling. And I think in the last 2.5 years, more has been done in this area, at least from our perspective, the government perspective. I can't speak on behalf of the private side, but from our perspective, I think we have a much better understanding now than we did just even 2.5 years ago, to the point where we are actually able to replicate some of this physics in a laboratory. So when we started this project, a lot of folks were concerned that maybe we were dealing with science fiction. And as it turns out, we're dealing with science fact. And maybe what some people considered fringe science just turned out to be advanced physics and quantum theory. So we've come a long way. And I think that's exciting news. But there's always, of course, a challenge. And for us, the challenge was, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a little test rather than tell you. And there's no grade here, but just bear with me with it for this little exercise we're going to do. It'll only take a minute, I promise. I'm going to ask you, the audience, to think in your mind what comes to mind when I say the word parachute. Keeping in mind, para, Latin, Greek, usually means beside or above. Most people think of a life-saving device that stops you from hitting the ground, and generally something positive. So let me ask you another word. Paramedic. What does that mean to you? So usually people think probably what you're thinking, a first responder, a lifesaver, generally someone who's going to do good for society, and it's something positive. So I'm going to ask you one more word. What does the word paranormal mean to you? I suspect some of you are having the same reaction that some of us had. And by the way, that's quite normal. It's also quite unnecessary. Paranormal is no different than paramedic or parachute or anything else with a para prefix. The reason why people react the way they do Maybe they have a shy hesitation. Maybe they kind of laugh or they raise an eyebrow. The reason why they do that is because of social stigma. Social stigma and social conditioning. And this is something that we've had to fight, because I would submit to you, by definition, everything in this universe is considered paranormal until it becomes normal. Okay? Until we understand how something works, it is always, by definition, beyond normal. This computer I'm using right now, my daughter's computer, to have this conversation with you, 30 years ago, quite paranormal. Today, pretty normal. So this is some of the mindset that we're challenged in trying to break down these barriers so we can have the conversation. We can have the conversation, the collaboration between our leadership, between our elected officials, between each other, as countries, as societies, as civilizations. So I think these are some of the things that we need to try to combat the best we can, and remove the social stigma from the conversation, so we can really figure out what is it we're dealing with. Should we be scared? Should we be excited? Should we be apprehensive? Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing. Is it a threat? Is it a blessing? We don't know. And I think we need more data. I think in the end we need more data. So that's a little bit about me. What I'd like to do is spend a few more minutes and answer some questions. I have 5 questions that were. Actually, I have a lot more questions than that, but I picked 5 questions that were submitted that generally tend to be the biggest questions people have about me and my motivations and what I'm doing and who I am. So I decided to take a few moments now and answer some of those questions for you, now that you know a little bit about me and the program and whatnot. So let's start with the first question. And this one comes from, looks like, Australia. Why did I decide to leave the department? There's an old saying. Sometimes if you like an organization, you stay with it. Sometimes if you love an organization, you leave it. And that was certainly my case. I left the department because my loyalty to the department, the people, and the secretary are bar none. These are some of the most amazing human beings I've ever had the honor and pleasure to serve with. But the bureaucratic challenges that existed within the department, I believe, needed to be changed. And I believe our secretary deserved to know the truth. He's an honorable man. I've seen the man serve his country in some very difficult situations. If there is one man that deserves to know what's going on, it's certainly him. And if there's one man who can change the system from within, it's also him, I can assure you. So that's why I left, and it hasn't been easy. It's pretty tough, pretty easy, I guess, to sit back in a chair and quarterback a game, right? It's another thing to actually be in the game and have to do it, and it's not easy. Question number 2. Do I believe in extraterrestrial life? Wow. I believe it's certainly possible that life exists beyond our solar system. I've been very careful in the past not to even ask the question when I was in the program. Again, keeping in mind, just as a rehash, we looked at what it was and how did it work, purposely avoiding who was behind the wheel. So for me to tell you it's from the Pleiades or Alpha Proxima, it would be disingenuous. I think we need more data. Could it be from there? Absolutely, sure. Could it also be from something or somewhere else? Yep, absolutely. So I think the bottom line is, until we have more data, we just don't know. We can speculate all day long, and the problem here is that in the absence of data, as human beings, we tend to fill in those information gaps with what we know, and sometimes even what we don't know, and that can be dangerous. So I don't know. I don't know where they're from. I think it's just about anything's possible, and we shouldn't discount anything. Is it interstellar? Is it interdimensional? Is it, who knows? But we need more data. So question number 3, I think I beat that one up to death. Question number 3, do I believe we are close to understanding how they work? Yes. Yep, we are really, really close. In fact, I would submit to you, I don't think we are thousands of years or even centuries away. I think, based upon my experience, we might be 20 years out. It's no longer a theoretical question of if it's possible. We have already demonstrated the physics with the CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, and some of these other places where we know absolutely some of the physics behind what we are seeing is not only possible, we're replicating it. We're replicating it, though, at a very small level. But the question of whether or not can it be done, that's not a question anymore. It is being done right now. The real question is now, it's a technological challenge. It's a scalability issue. How do we replicate and control what we can see now in the laboratory in the very small scale, and make that useful to us in everyday life, in the scale we live in now. Question 4. What was the largest single credit for success in ATIP? The people. The people's it. Without the people that are in that organization, we wouldn't have anything. These are people that are working very hard day in, day out, doing their job, mostly without any credit at all. And when people find out what they do, sometimes they're ridiculed, despite having the evidence. So these are very brave men and women that serve their country and serve society, and in my opinion, serve the world. I think they're doing the world a service. These are true heroes. And I'll leave it at that. And last question. How important is Latin America in helping the world better understand the phenomena? Absolutely critical. We can't do it without Latin America. For many reasons. I'll start with the most obvious. There are several nations in Latin America that have openly acknowledged you have a UAP program. And that is, I think, an exceptional position to have. I wish we were more like that. I think we could go a lot further if that was the case. So in that regard, you already have honest dialogue back and forth between your governments, the military, intelligence apparatuses, and the people. And I think that's vital. 2, there seems to be a lot of incidents down there, without going into a lot of detail. I think for some reason Latin America, in some regards, is a hot spot. I'm not saying other places aren't, but I think Latin America has a long history with the UAP phenomenon, and it's very compelling, the evidence that you've been able to collect. And it would be my hope that at some point here in the very near future, we'll get into a situation where we will be able to have a relationship with those countries in Latin America and be able to collaborate and exchange information and data and our experiences, so we can collectively put the talent and resources that are out there and bring them to bear on this incredible enigma, this puzzle. So with that said, the last thing I'd like to add is that we are now in the process of creating a community of interest electronically. This is going to be a very powerful tool, a very expensive tool, and a very complicated tool for us to build. So it's taking a little longer, but we are going to phase it in phases. And it's going to be a tool that's going to allow you as a user to input information and also retrieve information. There's going to be some analytics as well behind that you'll be able to tailor for your specific needs in virtually real time. So as things are happening, you would, in essence, perhaps get an alert. You'd be able to provide information in, take information out, and tailor that capability to suit your personal curiosities, your desires, your interests. I think it's going to be fantastic. And this is something that I think we can all share, and that will allow us to go exponentially forward. Because in the end, we need more data. This is a very data-hungry endeavor. So the more people that participate, the more people that support it, ultimately the quicker collectively we'll all succeed. So these are some of the exciting things that I think are going to be coming up in the near term, and I hope it benefits you. So thank you very much for having me. And if you're ever in the United States, any of you in the audience, please feel free to swing by. We'll have a cup of coffee, my treat, and I would love to chat. So I'm sorry I could not make it down this year. There were some reasons that were beyond our control, but I think hopefully next year maybe I can get down there. I'd love to get down there and have a chance to talk to you in person. So until then, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.